Against the bioluminescent panel of the reception hall, the human waited. 300 elite guards faced the massive blast doors, their ceremonial armor catching the harsh overhead glare. Only the human stood backward, his eyes locked on a blank, seamless expanse of decorative thermal routing. As the primary recording scribe for the Zenith Prime Diplomatic Summit, my duty required tracking the exact geometry of power in any room. The arithmetic of survival was typically simple. Threat approaches from the front, protection aligns accordingly. Yet Elias Cross, the sole terrestrial assigned to Princess Kalara's detail, stood exactly 3 feet behind her with his shoulders squared to a dead bulkhead. His vitals, transmitted to my peripheral data slate, remained terrifyingly flat. A profound, calculated insult. Through the archway walked Princess Kalara. Before stepping onto the main diplomatic floor, she halted. One deliberate, agonizing second of delay. The Athelian royal pause forced the entire assembly to hold their breath, an ancient display of temporal dominance. Cross did not turn to observe her entrance. I'll be honest with you. When the human first turned his back to the room, I thought he was a fool. I didn't know he was the only one looking at the dark. A low, vibrating hum from the station's atmospheric regulators permeated the chamber as the delegates took their seats. Above the central dais, lead guard Krell's azure skin pulsed with rapid, localized flashes. Our species' involuntary physiological response to severe stress. He furiously smoothed a microscopic wrinkle from his golden sash, his vanity demanding order. Then, his left hand dropped to trace the rigid cartilage of his throat. The traditional Athelian gesture preceding a hard, unyielding command. Correct your defensive vector, Cross. Krell hissed over the internal secure audio channel. You are exposing the Sovereign's primary flank. Rotate 180 degrees. The human remained entirely motionless, save for the heel of his right boot. Against the polished deck plate, the heavy reinforced rubber scraped slowly, grinding a faint white arc into the pristine composite metal. He dragged it backward an inch, tapped twice, and settled his weight. A meaningless, nervous tick from a fractured mind. The residue of trauma. Negative, Cross replied. The single terrestrial word carried no inflection, no apology. Against the crystalline data slate trembled my recording styluses as I documented the insubordination. His classified personnel file from the Sector 9 outpost massacre, I had reviewed personally. Severe psychological degradation, the archived data indicated. Fear, our species understood entirely. It was precisely why we faced our enemies with wide, unblinking eyes. To stare at a sealed ventilation wall while a high-stakes trade vote commenced behind you defied all logic. A broken defensive geometry. Formal censure filed. Krell snapped, his throat-tracing fingers twitching with barely contained fury. You will be removed the moment the primary doors seal. The heavy magnetic locks, the automated security system engaged with a concussive thud that rattled the floor plates. Zenith Prime was officially sealed. Inside the Grand Hall, 300 weapons pointed directly at the reinforced entrance. And facing the opposite direction, watching the silent, glowing veins of the cooling conduit, the human waited. At the center of the dais, the Sector 9 trade negotiations commenced. On this single diplomatic exchange rested the fate of 4-star systems. Billions of lives hinged on the princess maintaining an unbreakable posture during the proceedings. Krell tightened the primary perimeter. 300 armored guards stepped closer to the blast doors. Beside the royal podium, I tapped the brass calibration dial on my recording slate. The internal chronometer synced with the station's atomic clock. A routine atmospheric diagnostic indicated the ambient room temperature had dropped by exactly half a degree. A concussive shockwave ripped through the chamber. The explosion, a blinding flash of ignited magnesium, did not originate from the heavily fortified entrance. Behind the princess, the decorative thermal wall detonated outward in a shower of composite shrapnel. Before the Athelian royal guard could pivot, the terrestrial was already firing. He had never needed to turn. That white arc, no one had understood. It was the precise mathematical boundary of the blast radius. He had drawn his survivor column in the floor, calculating the exact geometry of our collective blindness. From the smoke emerged 3 figures in gray tactical weave. Cross met them directly at the choke point. No hesitation. Clinical violence. Punctured by a ceramic blade, the soft tissue of his left side began to hemorrhage immediately. Heat radiating from the wound, Cross dropped to one knee beneath the emergency strobes. He did not signal for a medical evacuation, nor did he check his own vitals. Instead, he slammed his bloodied palm against the adjacent floor grate, leaving a wet, crimson handprint smudged into the brushed steel. Across the chaotic hall, he locked eyes with the other human guard, Leo Graves. Cross pointed at the blood. Graves instantly abandoned the main door, sprinting to cover the secondary cooling shaft before the next wave of killers could breach it. His bioluminescence strobing in absolute panic, Krell finally brought his weapon to bear. The lead guard traced his throat wildly, screaming that the thermal conduit was chemically sealed and impossible to penetrate. Airflows. The human pressed a pressure patch to his side, his voice devoid of adrenaline. So do knives. Only then did the truth register in my data slate's telemetry. The arithmetic of survival requires absolute coverage. Because 300 elite soldiers were staring at the obvious danger, someone had to watch the impossible one. Cross had deliberately made himself blind to the room, shouldering the darkness so the Sovereign would never have to look at it. The Zenith Prime Accord passed an hour later. In the medical bay, synthetic dermal knit sealed the terrestrial's wound. The mandatory recovery period he rejected entirely, limping directly back to the royal corridor. Through the archway walked Princess Kalara. She did not stop to force the assembly to hold their breath. The Princess of Zenith knelt on the steel floor, watching the door for him. He turned his back to her. He faced the blank, seamless paneling. The corridor hummed with the vibration of the atmospheric regulators. One deliberate second passed in total silence. She waited for his nod before stepping into the light.